Greetings, everyone. We'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to find the link and get here. If you are new to COIN, make sure you put your name and your group in the chat. It always helps us to know who's here tonight. So if you'll go to the chat, put your name and whatever organization you're with or indivisible group is always helpful for us to know. Go ahead and do that, and then I'll give another minute before I welcome everybody in.
And maybe if you're not part of an indivisible group, let us know how you heard about this program.
Yeah, that'd be grateful. It's so great to see everybody from across the whole state. That's so awesome.
I think this is going to be the most important conversation we have this whole month.
Yeah, maybe this year, who knows? I don't know. Considering, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of COIN, the Consolidated Oregon Indivisible Network. On behalf of the COIN leadership team, I'm so glad that everyone's here tonight. This is so important that we have this conversation, or COINversation, as we like to say. There are going to be several rules that we're going to set out here. First, we'd like for everyone to please stay muted. You can, if you have questions or thoughts, you can put them in the chat, but we're here to learn from our guests tonight. And I will be taking really good notes, as I always do, about what people can do to be part of this fight now that we have to create a response to Roe. So those will be in the notes tomorrow. We always have some regular business as well. And those notes will be in the chat here about things that are coming up that COIN is hosting or has business about. And at the very end of the meeting, we'll allow 5 or 10 minutes just to talk about those at the end. One last thing is that if you put a note, if you put a question in the chat and we don't get to it, trust us, we've seen it. We'll have set it off to the side, and Laura, who's our amazing hostess tonight, will have it on her list and make sure she'll see it. All right. So I'm going to turn this over to Laura Allen to introduce our guest tonight.
Thank you, Terry. And I want to welcome everyone to our COINversation. We're calling it a response for Roe. We won't go back. We're looking forward to a great panel discussion with representatives from ProChoice Oregon, Northwest Abortion Access Fund, and Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. As Terry said, please put your questions for the panelists in the chat and we will get to them. It would be helpful also if you could identify yourself with that question and only put it in there one time. That would be very helpful. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and talk to us about your work in the wake of the Dobbs decision, its repercussions you're already seeing, and its impact or potential impact on Oregon, and what we as advocates and activists and volunteers can do to help. So I'll start with Christel Allen.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Christel Allen. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of ProChoice Oregon. Our organization may be familiar to folks on this call. We were formerly known as NARAL ProChoice Oregon, and we are just a little bit more focused on our state work, which we've been leading in the state for actually, as of this year, 45 years, was when folks like Mary Nolan, among others, actually started this organization, which has always really been focused on making sure that our state as a movement was really recognizing that abortion access is truly a state issue. I think that is one of the reasons why Oregon is, when it comes to where other states are at, we have really done a lot to prepare for this moment. I really feel like this organization that I've stepped into was really created purely for the situation we are in now. And so in leading this work, we need to recognize that we are doing some things really well in our state. I think we also need to recognize that without true access and the ability to afford abortion and the ability to have the support you need in your community, there is still ground to make up in the state and still communities that lack really access to their rights. And so beyond just making sure that we are centering people in our movement who are still not having their needs met when it comes to practical access, financial access, and geographic access, we also want to recognize that Oregon is positioned and is already experiencing people traveling to the state to receive care that in 5 states and unfortunately growing, care has officially become illegal in 5 states as of earlier this week. And unfortunately, we know that our neighbors in Idaho are likely to see their trigger ban go into effect by the end of this month. And so there's so much to be doing. And one of the things that makes me so excited is that we are in this work with incredible partners like Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and incredible networks of care like the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. So with that, I will turn it to my co-conspirators who will speak to their organizations next.
Thank you, Christel. Megan Kovacs of Northwest Abortion Access Fund.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me tonight. My name is Megan Kovacs. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a board member and volunteer for the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. We are the largest abortion fund by size of coverage area in the United States. We cover Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, and Washington. When we have board representation and volunteer representation from all 4 states. What the purpose of the abortion fund is to provide practical material support for people who are seeking abortions. So that means someone calls our hotline, we identify their needs, how far along they are in their pregnancy, if they have an appointment at a clinic, and where their appointment is. And then we offer them money to pay for it. We are a resource for people who can't afford abortion care or can't afford to travel to access abortion care, which, as we all know, is going to become increasingly important as Oregon becomes a sanctuary for abortion care. And Washington State will as well. We have been doing this for over 30 years in Oregon. We were originally Oregon-based. 2 abortion funds in the Pacific Northwest merged in 2017 to create NWAF. We, in the last year, have seen about a 100% increase in callers. And just in the last month, we have seen a significant increase in callers from out of state. We started seeing that when Texas's abortion ban went into place. And we have seen that grow exponentially over the past, since the Dobbs decision. Was that just a month ago? Good Lord, what is time? So we are a fairly volunteer-run organization. So our board of directors does most of the work for the organization. We have a well-trained, compassionate, trauma-informed group of volunteers who answer our hotline and our practical support line. And then we have 2 full-time paid staff members and 2 part-time paid staff members. So we run a tight ship and work really hard to provide the resources and care that we need, that the people who are needing to access abortions in the Pacific Northwest need. And I will turn it over to Cassie.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassie Purdy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the political director for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. We are the political and advocacy wing for Planned Parenthood here in Oregon. We also have 2 health center affiliates, Planned Parenthood of the Columbia-Willamette and Planned Parenthood of Southwestern Oregon, who we fight on behalf of. And we were not surprised by this moment. We've been preparing for this decision for a long time. And we know that it took decades of chipping away at abortion rights to get here. And so we're really grateful to be in partnership with the folks who are also on this panel tonight to be working for the next 3-4 decades to take back our rights and to make sure that Oregon is a place that unequivocally stands for access to abortion. We're really proud of the work that's been done in Oregon to make us the most protective state in the country. And like Christel mentioned, there's a lot of work to cover the gaps that already exist for Oregonians here, and to make sure that we can meet the need of people who will be traveling here to seek care. So we work really hard to make sure we can get pro-abortion champions elected to office at the state level, and to make sure that we are advocating for our clinics so that they can keep their doors open and they can staff up to meet the increased need, that they can hire patient navigators so that when our patients come to our doors, we can connect them with NOAF, and make sure that we're addressing the needs of all the Oregonians who come through our doors. We see about 60,000 patients a year just at Planned Parenthood Columbia-Willamette, and that we can also serve the needs of people who are coming to Oregon from out of state. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot from all of us for the rest of the hour.
Thank you very much. The first question in the chat, and this is actually a question that we'd had as well, is there a plan to put into the Oregon Constitution the rights that Oregonians have by statute relating to abortion, the rights that you fought for so hard all these years? And I'll start with you, Cassie.
We are definitely figuring out a plan and have been working on a plan to make sure that Oregonians' rights remain protected. We're fortunate to have the right to abortion codified in state law, that having it in the Constitution is the next best step. And we know, because of what Justice Thomas mentioned in his opinion, that they're not just coming for abortion rights. They're likely going to come for the right to contraception, coming for marriage equality, coming for any other thing enumerated under the right to privacy. And so we're looking at this holistically, and how we can make sure that all rights to bodily autonomy are codified in the Constitution, including access to gender-affirming care, which is also under attack in our country. Christel is much more engaged in those conversations than I am, so I will let her talk more about the detail, but I will just affirm that we have a plan and we're working on it.
Great. Christel.
Sure. Cassie did a great job of covering most of sort of the things we're thinking about. And I would say we're in the stage of a plan for a plan. When we do this work at the state level, I think we often really need to think about, like, what is their capacity to do in one state at one given time, just because of how Oregon's ballot measure process works. It requires months and months and months of potential signature gathering. But one thing that is afoot and is being looked at now, we're really thankful that the Speaker of the House, Dan Rayfield, has brought together, I think it's like 80 stakeholders and growing, experts in various aspects of reproductive care, justice, and rights. And there is a legal subcommittee that is looking at ballot measure language that would be expansive, not just of ensuring the right to an abortion in our state constitution, but also looking at what are those additional Supreme Court cases that could be under threat next, and what can we be doing to ensure that those rights exist at the state level. So state constitutions are becoming much more important, but we also don't do this work in a silo. And I will say there are numerous defensive and proactive state ballot measures across the country who really don't have this already codified when it comes to what they need to be doing. And, we really want to make sure that, there unfortunately is sometimes only as enough millions of dollars to run ballot measure campaigns across the country. When we defeated soundedly Measure 106, we did that with a lot of support from national partners. And so we want to recognize that we are feeling like it's really important to let folks know now that we feel very confident abortion is protected in Oregon. And we are seriously looking at what we can do to further protect that. But we also want to recognize that there are places in this country that really do need to be prioritized, who really don't have those protections like we do, and wanting to recognize we're part of a whole country that is fighting these fights with us, and we want to make sure that we are tending to the needs where they are greatest.
Thank you. Megan, do you want to add to that?
Christel covered it as always. She's wonderful. And I mean, we are a 501c3 only. So when it comes to endorsing candidates, political organizing, that's not really our wheelhouse.
Okay, thank you. Mary's raised a good question, and you all have referred to this in your discussions, that there are people who don't have abortion access in Oregon, whether they're covered maybe under a federal insurance plan and it doesn't cover it, so they can't afford it, or there's these deserts that we've been reading about of abortion access. Could you all elaborate on that and where there are those gaps and what we might do to help fill them? And take whoever wants to start.
I would love Cassie to share one of the most exciting developments on addressing those gaps. And then I'm happy to fill in however is helpful.
Okay, Cassie.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying, because in 2017, we passed the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which codified abortion rights into state law, not in our Constitution. But it also requires state regulated health insurance plans to cover abortion care and all sexual and reproductive care at no cost to the patient. And the gaps that we're talking about there are a lot of state plans, or there are a lot of insurance plans, including federal insurance plans, that are not covered under that law. But the thing that Christel wants us to talk about is in this past legislative session, we were able to secure $15 million in a reproductive health equity fund from the state to continue funding and addressing the gaps in coverage that exist here in Oregon and for people who may come here seeking care. So that money is going to be dispersed through a nonprofit organization called Seeding Justice. And they've already announced their first $1 million going to Northwest Abortion Access Fund, which will help them do the amazing critical work that they do to connect patients to care and to resources. So that money will be used for direct support to people seeking care, but it will also be used to invest in infrastructure in clinics to help clinics staff up, to buy things like more ultrasound machines, and make sure that we're addressing the deserts of care along with the need for financial resources.
So if a person was not covered, their abortion services were not covered, for example, they're under Medicaid or they're a tribe member or some other federal insurance plan, how would they access these funds through Seeding Justice? Is there an application process?
So individual patients are not the ones who are accessing the funds. If someone needs access to care and their insurance doesn't cover it, Medicaid in Oregon does cover abortion, OHP does cover abortion. But if someone has, say, a military plan, right? And they, that is not covered under the Hyde Amendment. They would call us at the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. So that's how that money is being distributed. The first $1 million of that $15 million came to the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. We've also, as you can imagine, gotten a lot of donations in the past few months. And the way that is accessed is by calling our hotline, leaving a message, and then we call folks back and ask them just a very few basic questions. We're not trying to create additional barriers for people. We know that, having a conversation with a stranger about needing money is already a really difficult thing to have to do. So we, talk to them briefly about what their need is. And then if they need access to an abortion, if they need funding for their abortion appointment, we'll send a voucher to the clinic for the amount that they need covered. And if they need travel, we'll work with them to coordinate whatever travel they need, pay for lifts for them, pay for a plane ticket, pay for a bus ticket. We have some folks who provide rides for people as well. And then, we'll pay for a hotel room, we'll pay for groceries, we'll pay for childcare, whatever a person needs to help them access their appointment.
Great. Christel, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think something, and I'll just sort of allude to one of the questions in the chat, but also I think it's a question worth asking in itself is, recognizing that Oregon's laws can only go so far. We are only able to regulate about, I think, 27% of all private healthcare plans in the state. I think that's 27% of Oregonians who have those state regulated plans. And then there's about 21% of plans that are regulated at the federal level. And so all that to say is between, interesting things like that, where our abilities can only go so far. I think one thing that is really important to note is, we need to talk openly and candidly about where those points are. There's a variety of reasons. And one of them is also just historical underinvestment in communities that experience those biggest gaps. And so I think there is a huge opportunity in some of the things that both Megan and Cassie have talked about through looking at these issues with a community informed process. People understand the barriers that they face, and we just need to do a better job of listening to them and making sure that we are thinking through all of the things that can prevent people from, having access to a provider they trust. Often, it can be just about lack of a clinic in their communities. It's also, important to recognize we have new tools like medication abortion that can be taken at home. We have new tools like telemedicine, but it can often still exclude same people who are facing sort of the digital divide in our state and may not have access to broadband internet. And so we really just need to take this conversation to really the individual level, listen, and then start to make sure that we are using that to really drive systems change. We can do all the things that we do through really smart policy, but if it's not informed from community members experiencing these barriers, we're going to miss things. And so we are getting started on that work with our speakers work group, but also I think we're all excited as partners to be involved in, the beginning of the Reproductive Health Equity Fund, because it's really looking at using a totally different model that I really feel like there's so much promise to address these very stubborn disparities that exist, and fully own that it is certain people. It is Black and brown people in our state. It is gender non-conforming and non-binary people in our state. It is young people. It is people who live in rural areas of our state. And so just really naming those communities as the ones who are not accessing the care they deserve and really doing that deep listening and making sure our policy is informed from those folks.
Yeah, one of the biggest barriers we see in Oregon, and one of the oftentimes, because we have so many mechanisms in place to pay for people's abortions in Oregon, that's not really what most people calling from Oregon need. But what they do need when they're calling from more rural places is access to travel. Because oftentimes, especially in Eastern Oregon, it is 45 minutes to get to an abortion clinic. In Idaho, it is 5 hours to get to one in Oregon. So that is, a situation where, oftentimes we'll pay for somebody who is an Oregon resident to have their abortion in Idaho, even though it would have been covered by OHP in Oregon, because a 10-hour round trip drive on a day you need to access care if you have kids, if you have a job. I mean, that's not access, right? That's not accessible. So, now that Idaho is going to be closing their abortion clinics next week on the 24th, we expect, we're going to really have to make sure that folks in parts of the state that don't have abortion clinics, the 73% of counties in Oregon that don't have abortion clinics, continue to be able to access care.
Thank you. I think you probably responded to some of the questions in the chat with those answers, but I want to ask Mary's question. What do we do if the GOP takes over and they pass a federal statute banning abortions nationwide?
I don't want to shy away from it. Like, that is a real threat, and that is why elections matter. So I'll just say, like, we can't in any state step away from doing the political work that Cassie recognized, that endorsing pro-abortion candidates is needed now more than ever. And it's a huge opportunity for our side too. This is an issue that connects with upwards of 70% of people across the country, and who didn't want to see Roe be overturned. And so we really need to recognize and do as much outreach as we can. We can't forget about our own state. Like, just for what it's worth, I am nervous about our governor's race. I am nervous about maintaining a majority in the Senate. Those are things that we have to continue to focus on if we want to continue all the progress that we've made in our state and have the potential to. But I love Indivisible because I know y'all get involved with priorities and key races all across the country. And so we've got to walk and chew gum, and we've got to do more than we've ever done, because that threat of a federal ban is real. And Right to Life is like openly talking about it, that is their ultimate goal. And it's something that is incredibly scary, and yet we can't let that fear paralyze us. We have to act, we have to be everywhere, and we have to have open, bold conversations with everyone we know that will truly one day, hopefully, destigmatize this healthcare service and use it as motivation to turn out this November like we've never turned out before.
Thank you. Cassie, do you want to add anything to that?
Christel's right. There's a question in here about opening a clinic in Ontario that I will address really quickly. And just to say, you've probably heard the rumor, and Planned Parenthood Columbia Willamette is working on preparing to open a clinic in Ontario. It's our highest priority to make sure that that is done safely, to make sure that the clinic itself is like physically safe, and also that people who are going to come there to seek care will be able to be safe on their way there and on their way out. So we are doing this very deliberately, and we'll open as soon as we are able to do that safely. But we do know that the Boise clinic has closed already, even without the trigger ban in place in Idaho, and people are struggling to find access to care east of the Cascades. So we're trying to find the balance between expediency and safety for everyone.
Thank you. Next question is, can you all talk about the impact of the private Catholic hospital system or any religious affiliated hospital system on access to abortion, reproductive and gender affirming care for those who are served by those Catholic hospitals? Who wants to field that one first?
Well, I think both Megan and we both grew up in the Catholic tradition, so I know this issue fires her up as much as me, and Cassie also has lots of feelings about this issue of religiously affiliated healthcare systems actually having more rights to religion than the individual patient's beliefs or needs being met. this is a huge issue in the Northwest in particular. We have like comparatively such a high number, like percentage wise, of our hospital beds in the state are in Catholic institutions. In addition, one of our state's biggest private insurance companies, Providence, is also Catholic. And it's something that, you know, you need both. You need facilities where abortion is available, especially in hospitals where there can often be complications with pregnancy that require abortion to save the pregnant person's life in cases. And when we have, you know, private institutions with policies that are so restrictive, like it honestly puts people's lives at risk. It also is a big problem in our state because the places where we have some of these Catholic and other religiously affiliated institutions often are, they are monopolies in their community. They buy up all of the local clinics, and when you're part of those systems, even if you have never gone to church a day in your life and you're a provider, if that is like the network that you are operating within, you are also not able to provide the care that you wish. I know doctors personally who moved their practice because a Catholic entity moved into town, bought everyone up, and they were no longer able to provide the type of care, the full spectrum reproductive care that they wanted to. And this was a doctor that worked with migrant communities. And one of the things that was so frustrating is these are folks that would often want to choose tubal ligations following pregnancy of the last number of children that they wanted for their families. That was something that is most safe to do, like following a pregnancy directly. And by requiring another visit, that was often out of the financial means of the families that she was supporting, and they weren't literally able to own their reproductive decisions about how many family members they wanted to raise. And so it just became so personally frustrating that she literally moved because she could no longer look her clients in the eyes and feel like she was providing them the care that they deserved. That's just I'm very fired up. I'm sure I missed talking about things and would just open it up to Megan and Cassie to share more.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Christel, do you want to, I don't know a whole lot about this because I was just doing the comm side of it, but do you want to talk about the Equal Access to Care Coalition and the bill that passed last year?
Yeah, we have made some progress. And so I just want to lift that up. And this is still a big problem in our state. Places that are access deserts are places that people wouldn't necessarily think of as access deserts because they have sort of progressive bases, places like Hood River, places like the entirety of the Oregon coast. Thankfully, we have Planned Parenthood in Bend, but that's also a Catholic healthcare system that they are operating within. And so we have these large geographic areas of our state that are serviced primarily by Catholic institutions. And we were seeing just growing consolidation. And so what we were able to do by passing the Equal Access to Care Act is require that these corporate entities, which is what they are, actually have to create a public input process and actually provide a plan that shows that access will remain following a proposed merger or affiliation. And so people won't be, we can say that people will have a voice and people won't lose access following a merger or affiliation. That doesn't necessarily do much to change the current deserts that exist because of this issue, but it does prevent it from becoming a worse problem.
Has that been done yet? Has that law been put into effect and stopped any mergers at this point, or?
Oh, it's law, and we were in a lot of rules advisories committees with every single healthcare lobbyist in the state, tearing out their hair. But it was really gratifying to be in there and know that that's now law. So, yay.
Has it been used yet to stop any mergers or reach any agreements?
I don't think any, and one of the things we were kind of excited about is like, maybe they will think twice by just wanting to gobble up more corporate profits and provide crappier care and access to services. So I don't believe there has been a proposed merger or affiliation since the bill passed, which is a win in itself.
That is good news. Anything else either of you like to add?
The only other thing I'll add that is equally important to thinking about our religiously affiliated places where people access care is religiously affiliated insurers, like Christel mentioned. And it has been 5 years since the Reproductive Health Equity Act was passed in Oregon, and there are still insurers who are dragging their feet to provide the coverage that they are required by law to cover in Oregon. And many of those are religiously affiliated insurers, one in particular. So in addition to making sure that our hospitals are places where people can access care, we are also doing a lot of work to make sure that the law is being implemented and followed by those insurance companies.
Okay. I had a question here about support being provided to rural organizers that may not have a big support system, that are combating misinformation and poor tactics like hoarding abortion pills when Oregon has more rights than other states. Are you all aware of that or have any comment on that?
I think I'm learning about this for the first time, so I would love to learn more. I have heard whispers in other states and really want, I think that's why it's so important to make sure people in Oregon know that access remains legal. And we really have to think about like, where is the need the greatest, and, make sure that those resources are available.
Okay.
Hoarding is just bad, like toilet paper, like just buy what you need.
There are people who are interested in providing transportation to people who need abortions. And is there a place they can look or go to volunteer?
It's us. You can fill out a volunteer application on our website, nwaafund.org. I will say, please be patient with us. We have one staff member who processes volunteer applications, and in the last month, we have gotten over 1,000 applications, which is great. It's amazing. We're so thrilled, and it's going to take us a while. to train and onboard and even sift through the applications, but especially to train and onboard people to be able to provide care and help and support. We're so grateful for the amazing outpouring of support in the community. It's really been incredible. And we're a little underwater right now.
Okay. I think one of the things we wanted to achieve tonight is to get out there where people can volunteer, what activists can do to help all of you. Yes, Christel.
I'm going to share a link. Speaking of Catholic healthcare institutions and just, healthcare corporations in general, one of the things that I wanted to lift up as sort of a place where we're seeing unnecessary burdens, which put more pressure on organizations like NWAF to cover services that honestly, maybe they don't even need to be, because health insurers are overcharging patients for services that should be free, thanks to the Reproductive Health Equity Act. So in the chat, I've shared a story sharing form. We really want to make sure that we have stories to fight back on health insurers that are overcharging. And so if you know people or have heard of people who received a bill and they're like, I thought we passed REA and I thought this should be free, Like there are some things where more education in our state is needed about who's covered under REA and who's not. But in many cases, according to a new report by our state regulators, people are being overcharged. Thankfully, we do have a state agency leader at the Department of Consumer and Business Services that is very committed to making patients whole who've been overcharged. But I just want to lift up that making sure that we can do that may require some political pressure. And so the best thing folks can do is help us gather stories to make that case.
Thank you. Thanks for taking that question. Following up on my last question about what we can do to help, what activists can do, how they can get involved, what can specifically folks do with an intersectional lens that centers people with less privilege? And you've all alluded to the importance of that going forward. So what can we do along those lines?
Yeah, I can share a couple of thoughts. One, we have an amazing reproductive justice organization in Oregon, Forward Together, and they would love your support. Give them money, shout them out on social media, all of those things. I'll also say, we've talked about needing to get pro-abortion champions elected, and this year we have a ton of BIPOC candidates who are pro-abortion, who are amazing champions, not just for our issues, but for economic justice, for climate justice, transportation justice, and they need your help to get elected too. We have a long list of endorsements on our website. ProChoice Oregon PAC has a long list of endorsements on their website, but those folks, shout out to Twee Tran and Ramiro Navarro and people who are running and could really use folks to help get out the vote for them. That's with my Planned Parenthood PAC hat on, by the way. And then Christel, you want to talk about deep canvassing and anything else that we have ideas about?
Sure. Although Megan, I feel like I saw you get excited about something. I don't want to step on your toes.
I just wanted to address one of the members of the group here, Joanne, wanted me to address the anti-racist work that we're doing as an organization to lead with this work. And that is a critical component of the entire organization and how it has been led and developed and structured. We do that in everything from how we work with callers and how we train our volunteers to also how we pay our staff. And it is a consideration in every single part of the work we do.
Thank you. Thanks for answering
Thank
that.
you, Megan. And thank you, Laura. I'm sorry to interrupt, and I appreciate you circling back. I think one tangible thing Cassie just mentioned was supporting those BIPOC candidates. That is a tangible way to have an intersectional lens that centers people with less privilege than those folks here in this call. So thank you so much. Thank you also for talking about some of the practices that you have in your organizations. But I'm just wondering, for those folks that are doing that deep canvassing, right? They're having one-to-ones with conversations out here in rural Oregon, where they may not think about how, bodily autonomy impacts undocumented women or Black women in a different way, right? And why it's important to protect it for people that have less privilege than folks that have health insurance and that can access some form of care. So I was wondering if you have any tidbits, right? We're trying to grow here as people, not just as organizers, and on how can folks incorporate this equity intersectional lens into their everyday chats with their neighbors and church folks and community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah, Joanne, thank you. I love every single bit of really important nuance that you are bringing to this conversation. I just want to recognize that leaders within the reproductive justice world have been saying that our entire like ability to have bodily autonomy, to choose families, to raise them like in the ways in which we want to raise them, to make sure our children can grow in safe and healthy environments. Like these are core issues. And yes, abortion is the thing that is being directly threatened, but it is not just about legal rights. It has to be about just a full intersectional, like fully cross movement solution, because it's not just legality that's going to prevent one person to have access versus the other. It's all of the structural inequities that exist that continue to perpetuate these deep disparities in healthcare outcomes. It is not okay that in a state like Oregon, we still have Black and Indigenous pregnant people experiencing 3 to 4 times the number of morbidity or mortality as a result of pregnancy than white pregnant people in our state. And so it can't just be about abortion. It has to be about all of the things. And one of the things that I think has worked well in the state like we have in Oregon is that we really do this work in deep coalition with a very wide variety of partners, and it makes our work better. And so I think one interesting thing that's an example is sometimes it means not running to do the thing right away that people are asking for you, but to really wait and make sure that like everyone is getting what their communities need out of the policies that we're advancing. I don't know if a lot of folks know this on the call, but we actually were we introduced basically the bill that ultimately became REA in 2017. It was first introduced in 2015. And one of the biggest challenges is that folks were saying like, we can't afford to do the expanded access program for undocumented folks in our state. And we'll do it later was sort of like the argument that some folks were pushing for. And our coalition, based on a lot of the, deep like trust building among partners, we said, all right, well, we're not doing the bill this year. And we waited and we built power, and and I want to give a lot of credit to organizations like APANO, Oregon Latino Health Coalition, Western States, and others for like really recognizing and making sure that they were holding partners like my organization and others accountable to not push forward a half solution, that until we are all free, none of us are. And so I think we all have important roles to play. I know that the staff of our organizations and many of our boards are growing and becoming stronger because we're becoming more diverse and representative, and that absolutely needs to continue. This work is really hard, and this work really needs to be led by the folks who are directly impacted by these issues. And so I love being the oldest person in, my organization and in a lot of the rooms I'm in. And so the other things that I think folks on this call can be doing is, making sure that we're having these cross-generation conversations, that we are reaching out, that we're making sure people use as inclusive language as possible, but also really name those inequities. And like, don't be afraid to name privilege, and don't be afraid to name power. And, don't be afraid to step back and learn and like reassess like how we're talking about these and how we can all be better advocates.
As a follow-up to that, and this goes back to a question Joanne had raised earlier, is with the $15 million that's been appropriated that you talked about, does that lead with race equity, and what, how will that work to achieve these goals of equity and reproductive justice that you talked about?
One thing I'll just start with is our organization, among others, like we proactively reached out to Seeding Justice because we had seen the incredible work that they had done in administering the Oregon Worker Relief Fund, which provided support during COVID to populations that were like willfully excluded from the federal like aid that was being shared with most families in those really hard days of COVID when folks were being laid off left and right and furloughed. Oregon made an investment in seating justice, and they assembled this incredible group of community-based advocates who did that work and had those relationships and really just oversaw just a tremendous outpouring of real support that people needed because people were dying, and it wasn't people who had received these checks in many cases and had healthcare and jobs. It was people who were excluded from those federal supports because of their immigration status. And so we saw that track record and saw like how they provided such a community lens to the type of work. And absolutely, like not only just worker relief, but they've also administered similar community funds to support efforts to provide clean and drinkable water on native land in our state. It's what they're known for, and it's why they were such a natural partner for us to approach. And it was just so affirming when we were like, hey, are you interested in doing this thing that no one's ever done, but would you be interested? And it was just like, oh, absolutely, yes. And it was just fantastic to have our legislators trust us to like put something out there that is new and innovative and already inspiring other states to follow this lead. So racial equity, and it's something that is just like core to who seating justice is. And it's something that I'm excited just to honestly be a witness in the room to see how this fund moves forward.
Great, thank you. We've had a number of questions about, what else can we do? What can we do to help? And are there particular congressional races where there is a greater need, and where will our dollars go the furthest? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, Oregon's got some killer races.
Yeah.
I have to just compartmentalize and focus on the state work that I need to do. So at some point I will start, going on those websites that do all of that tracking. But as of now, I think we've got some really key races in our state. And I'll also just say, like, we got to keep the Senate. So if I have any extra money, like I'm supporting BIPOC candidates running for Senate, and anyone who's got a great shot at kicking out a anti-abortion Republican, they've got at least $25 from me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Cassie?
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. I mean, we've got some great congressional candidates running, like Christel mentioned, but our focus is really on keeping the majorities in our state Senate and House and getting Tina elected. So I just dropped our Defender list link to sign up for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. You can sign up there to get updates about our GOTV efforts and other ways to get involved. But yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. If anyone has any other questions, put them in the chat now. But we appreciate what all of you have to say, and if you have anything to add to close us out, that would be great. Megan, or?
I'll just say, it's going to take all of us fighting together to make sure that our state continues to be a place where people can access care. And we know that Roe is always the floor and never the ceiling. And that all of the questions you've asked tonight have just reaffirmed that what we need is reproductive justice in our state. We need to make sure that all people have the right to bodily autonomy, to parent children in safe and sustainable communities, and to determine whether and when it's right for them to have a child. And we really appreciate you all being here with us and asking these really thoughtful questions.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, we are doing our best to continue to provide access to the number of people who are calling us, particularly from out of state and who need access to travel. Again, we are working as fast as we can to onboard new volunteers, which is, I mean, truly incredible. And also, I have never been in an organization where we've gotten 1,000 volunteer applications in like 2 weeks. So we're very excited for the interest. And if you do sign up, again, patience is the name of the game here. We are always accepting donations, of course. That money goes directly to care for patients. That goes directly to support travel funding. That goes directly to support paying for a person's abortion appointment. So oftentimes donating to the abortion fund is the best way to help people access care.
Thank you. And Christel?
Last little thing I just wanted to share, like we are so committed to coalition and cross movement work. I've shared, the last link I've shared, I promised, is sort of a way to get introduced to like cross movement organizing for folks who are near Eugene on August 14th, and in Portland or around Portland in August 21st. We are working on a sort of different approach from like the regular march or rally. We're calling it Abortion Justice Field Day, working name, but probably the whole name. And we will be announcing many more plans later, but the goal is for this to be a place where everyone is welcomed, where we are centering reproductive and abortion justice in our work, where we are learning and listening and supporting each other through mutual aid. And so it's not a rally, it's a way to like learn about all the different ways you can support reproductive justice in our state. You can have a voice, you can be heard, and we can also learn and listen from each other. So if you are interested in that, if you sign up this bit.ly for bit.ly/Oregon Abortion Justice, it takes you to a pledge. And it's all of the partners who've been working together for years and will continue to be working together to win elections, to make sure communities are heard, and to advance systems change that we all need.
Thank you. Thank you very much to each of our panelists and to all of you for joining us tonight. I think if the group wants to stay on, we do have some announcements, as this is our regular scheduled meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so